Hello. Um, this isn't a usual Superman or Batman, I guess it's Friday, episode of One Comic Book a Day. It's not even an episode of One Comic Book a Day. It's been a rough week for us here. My 3.5-year-old golden retriever, who uh, I definitely referenced a few times over the course of the 2 years or year and a half I've been doing this. Uh, Passed away very suddenly on Tuesday. So I've been pretty much an emotional wreck the entire time. Um, so I don't even know if this is going to be watched by anyone, nor do I care. The way I am, I like to narrate things, events, things in my life, stories. It's how I always have been. I used to, as a child, my favorite playtime was called telling stories, and I would just run back and forth, telling a story in my head to myself, usually pretty plagiarized from Power Rangers. I never truly grew out of that. I now just kind of pace. So as memory will eventually fade, I just kind of want to talk about my puppy, and I'm going to cry. I'm This is very difficult, but this is what I'm going to do. My wife, family are pretty big in the golden retriever community. My mother-in-law is a breeder. She's very particular about who she sends golden retrievers to. She doesn't send a pup. She's not a puppy mill. You have to be approved by her to get a puppy from her. He was from Rameth, who was her only golden retriever, I think, at the time. She's had some trouble breeding in the past couple of years. Rameth or Ramath is named after the golden dragon from the Dragon Riders of Pern series. My in-laws are very big fantasy people. I've read the first book. I didn't really enjoy it. Rameth is a very small, very red golden retriever. She is very lovely and has amazing dexterity. I've watched that dog scale nearly the whole of her 8 to 10 foot chain link fence of her kennel. Something I didn't think a dog could do, like that. She herself has had a growth on her since she was fairly young that was supposed to kill her within a year, and she has now made it to 10. She's not, possibly not doing great. She's developed a cough in the last year, but she made it to an old age. She has made it to an old age. Cooper was from, his name was Cooper. Cooper was from her last pregnancy she'll ever have. There were 8 puppies, 6 were boys, 2 were girls. One of the girls was kept. Her name is Conga, named after a Disney World drink, Conga Deluge. There was a theme of special in this litter because there's always sort of a special theme, and we wanted to name him Cooper after Special Agent Dale Cooper from Twin Peaks. At the time, we didn't realize Cooper was a pretty generic name you give a golden retriever, like the amount of Coopers in the golden retriever community. Part of that always kind of disappointed me. I always like unusual names. So his full name was Special Agent Dale Cooper. He was born on October 19th. He was born on October 16th, 2019. He was a C-section due to the growth being very close to where she needs to give birth. There's just no physical way for her to give birth without a C-section anymore. Or ever. We didn't get to take him home. Well, they live in Oklahoma, so we went out there for Christmas, got there on the 19th, I believe, and my in-laws decided that they wanted to do a scavenger hunt to find him, even though he was in a travel crate. He was in a travel crate in the back, right in the backyard. You could hear him whining and barking. It was really easy to find, and I was going to just go get him. They were getting mad at me for not doing the scavenger hunt. From that moment, he was just so energetic. God, he was a lot. When we took him into the bedroom, literally one of the first things he did when we put him down, my wife was unpacking, and he went right into her clothes and picked up one of her boots and just kind of walked away with it. He was annoying to a degree from the start. He had a really great memory for where things were. He figured out where the horse food was, and almost every time he ran outside, he would go right to where the horse food was to eat it. We drove to take him home because we didn't want to put him on an airplane. We never wanted to put him on an airplane. We took him back to Oklahoma at least twice, where we drove from Southern California, where we lived, to Oklahoma because we didn't want to put him on an airplane by himself in a crate. So we got home on the 31st. It was New Year's. We put him in his crate we had put up here immediately so we could unpack. He wasn't happy about it. He still was having fits in his crate. You put a young puppy into a crate at a young age, so when they flip out and try to break the crate, they can't do anything to it, so they're used to it when they're an adult, when they can possibly break the crate and actually hurt themselves doing it. He'd only been in it once or twice, but one of the wonderful things, because it took probably around 24 hours for us to get home with very little sleep due to having to stop for him often, he that night, around 8-ish, when he got sleepy, just walked right into his crate and slept. It was wonderful, and we never had a problem with him. We were so worried about the neighbors because we live in an apartment that's basically an old house where they turned it into 4 apartments, essentially like diagonal, the same apartment. So there's us, and then over here is the neighbors, and then the neighbors, and then over the middle section there's a 4th apartment. We, lucky enough, have the number one right in front apartment, so there's actually a lawn out front that made taking him out fairly easy. As his injections finally kind of came in and he could go out more, COVID happened. I actually remember when the lockdown happened, he had diarrhea that night. It was pouring rain, and he was, even as he got older, he was a pain to take out during when he had diarrhea, because he was so persnickety about where he pooped. Once again, there's a lawn out there, and he would not poop in that lawn. The amount of times it was like 3 o'clock in the morning, and he clearly really had to go. He would just sit there and stare at me while I wanted to take him, wanting to go anywhere else but the front lawn until it became too bad. God, I wanted to kill him those nights because I didn't want to walk 2 blocks in the dark at 3 o'clock in the morning to do something he could easily do there and was easier for me to deal with in our own lawn. God, it was the day after my birthday, and he had to go, and I remember him. He didn't want to go on the lawn. I didn't want to take him. I was so mad, and I sat because our lawn is raised, so he can just sit there. And I pet him for 10 to 20 minutes till he was finally able to go. He had a very sensitive stomach. Even changing his food caused problems. God, this tangent. He loved walks from the get-go. He was paying, though, as a golden retriever, full of energy. He loved people. He just loved people, and due to COVID, he never got the right amount of socialization he should have. So even as we trained him, he never got over wanting to jump at people. He got better to ignore people if they were ignoring him, but as soon as you said something or looked at him, made like a eye-to-eye contact, that was basically giving him consent that you wanted him to jump all over him. And some people were upset. There was a time where we would stop him with treats as people walked by, and so often, and I would dread it every time, as they were walking by, they would look at him and say, "What a good boy," and he would immediately lose it. Just, "You are my new best friend." He loved people just so much. When we would take him to the dog park, he would spend half the time running at the dogs and running to the people to get attention. We have a video of him like running like full strength into an old woman and like knocking her into a tree. That's how bad he was. I'm absolutely terrified or dreading running into some of the people who knew him. There's at least two people. This old man who recently had his dog put down, we actually helped him with that, would run into Cooper, and Cooper would be all over him. Me being antisocial was never looking forward to these moments, and also Cooper had a tendency to take a while when he had to go outside and pee. Sometimes we think he just wanted to go outside, and it would be really annoying to stand there as he sniffed everything, and then he would come up. His name is either Larry or Gary. I don't remember, or Jerry. I have a tendency to forget which one it is, but he was always excited to see Cooper, and I know him and this woman who lives around the corner. She like him, saw him when he was a puppy and pet him, and she was always very excited and let him jump all over her. Her son, when he's outside and saw me walk by with Cooper, would yell, "Hello, Cooper, hi, Cooper," over and over again, would run in to tell his mom. Cooper remembered the house so well that most of the times we would walk by it, he would perk up his ears and stare at it, waiting for her to come outside. And then there's just the neighbors don't even like really know our names, and there are people who would walk by and say, "Hello, Cooper," and I would turn to my wife, and we'd both have no idea who this person was or how they knew Cooper's name. They knew Cooper's name. God, he was so social. Sorry, I'm collecting my thoughts. I'm not going to edit this. It's going to be hard to rewatch it, but I'll need that later. He had a lot of fringe. His hair kind of dragged down. It really annoyed me because sometimes he would poop on his back hair. I would just cut it off, which annoyed my wife. He and his whole line really loved to lay on their back. Like, my wife has grown up with golden retrievers, of course, but she would even point out she had never known golden retrievers that like to lay on their back this much, just constantly lay on his back. When we started letting him sleep out and he could jump on the bed, he loved to cuddle. I would wake up so often with him on me in some way, or him trying to push me off the bed, or him lying his head on my face. If my wife was out of town, he would basically sleep in my face. I woke up several times with his wet nose in my eye. He apparently did that with my mother when we went to Disney World a year ago, and he was left with them. He had a tendency to want to eat everything from when he was a puppy. He just loved ripping out grass, and we could never get him out of that habit. We would take him to a lawn because there's another apartment with a gated lawn in front of it, so we would go out there to try to play with him, and that became too much of a problem because he didn't want to play very much. Even if you had treats, he'd rather run to where it was really easy to pull out, like mouthfuls of grass. He loved bark, he loved sticks, he just loved chewing on everything. I remember so many people walking by us while he had like a massive stick in his mouth, just so happy, smiling or laughing, because man, he loved those sticks. We had to stop taking him to that yard because we think there's something in there that's deadly to dogs, and he's the only one who would eat things. We had a really bad moment like 2 years ago during lockdown where several times he got sick in there, and he would vomit for like an hour in intervals and have like trouble holding down water. And one time it got really bad, and we had to take him to an emergency room. Where by the time we got to the emergency room, he was pretty fine. This is a massive complaint for the greater LA area. We live in Pasadena. Both times we ended up having to take him to an emergency room. It took time because every emergency room that's open, you would call, and they were at capacity. It's shocking how bad this is. The first time this happened, it took like 40 minutes to find an emergency room that would take him, and even they were at capacity, and it took forever for them to take him, but luckily he was fine. In fact, my wife was complaining as we were sitting out there that with him being overly excited, he was still throwing up, but he was acting fine, and he was so excited about people, and people were coming in with dogs and were breaking down crying and would come up to him and pet him, because that's what they needed. My wife really wanted to make him a support animal where you could take him into a hospital for people to pet. God, he would have been so good at that. He was fine. They thought it was an allergy. We think it was something he ate there, but he was fine. That was a really bad night. He threw up all over his bed, so I immediately, when we got home, and it was like after midnight, I put it in the washing machine, and it pushed the drum enough that the washing machine water, half of it went into the drum and half of it went all over the floor. So yeah, that was a very stressful bad night. I'm still trying to think of things to talk about. I go for jogs around the Rose Bowl, so I started taking him like a year and a half ago. First, just walking him because I was worried about really pushing him. I would get up. I took him for his morning walk, so I like to jog in the evening, but when I started taking him, I turned my jog into mornings. And when it got to the summer and it was 100 and something degrees, we would go out at like 4 to 5 o'clock in the morning, run into coyotes to beat the heat so I didn't inadvertently kill him. And it took forever because not only did he want to sniff everything, he was not fixed. He liked to mark his territory. And if you ever jog around the recreational loop, there's two parts that are technically called the loop around the Rose Bowl. We jogged around the small kind of park area that they use for extra parking, and it's essentially like a park. It's a grass, and there's these large rocks. Can't really call them boulders. I'd say they're no larger than a microwave that are like evenly spread out all across the borderline. And if I was lucky, he maybe marked every 10th rock. If I wasn't lucky, it was much more than that. And there's people there that will be asking about him eventually. They already kind of asked about him because we had to stop taking him out. Other things about him, he was incredibly needy. He loved my wife more than me. I spent more time with him. I'm never certain why that was, but he absolutely loved her. He due to being a COVID pup, he had separation anxiety. When she left for work, he would be fine because he understood that was normal. But leaving any other time, he was just a pain in the ass, running around wanting to go outside to look for her. And one time we went outside, she was walking back from something, so we always thought she would be coming up and walking every time we went outside. Sometimes he would pull me to her parking spot to sniff where the car was, to try to figure out where she was. When we were back in Oklahoma and we left him with her parents for like an hour, he more than once, one time tried to follow the UPS man back to his truck, and another time while we were gone meeting with friends, he ran out and sniffed where our vehicle had been to try to figure out where we were. Oh God, this is difficult. He sighed a lot, and you would hear him just heavy sigh from across the room. He loved to sleep on the cold floor of the bathroom. You could hear him a lot in my videos. He was a pain. Like, as soon as I started talking, he would come tip-tapping across the hardwood floor. There was a video, I don't think it was Mondays, it may have been last Friday's, where he's really apparent because I powered through it. If you ever heard loud tip-tapping, it was him. Early on, I did these videos sitting down, and he would come up and lay his head on my leg. He loved, as I said, he loved to cuddle. More than once back when we had our old couch. We got a replacement couch, this thing with terrible pillows in the back, in September of last year. He would jump up right next to, because I record these right next to the couch, and he tried to get pets for me. I don't think he ever made it onto a video. I think I cut him out every time. But he was a big part of these. He would lay down in that spot I record in, or he would lay down on my foot while recording. There's so many videos where there's 30 seconds to a minute of me just standing there in mid-sentence waiting for him to finally find a spot to lay down in. He could be such a pain about that. He loved to take my spot on the bed constantly. I would get up to brush my teeth, then come back into the bedroom. He'd be laying on my pillows. I'd lay on top of him to make him get up, because eventually he got annoyed by that. Funny, he loved to lay on us, but hated to be laid on himself. Oh, whenever he laid down, he would like wag his tail really quickly, just like once or twice. Like, he was so happy to lay down. As for him eating grass, we have a really crappy screen door, and really early on, he ended up pushing it open without us noticing it, so he had gotten out. We had joked a few times that if he ever got out, he would just get distracted by the lawn, and funny enough, we don't know how long he was out there, maybe less than a minute, maybe a little bit more, but he was just in the corner of the yard digging a hole. That's what he did with his freedom. He started digging a hole in the corner of the yard. Oh, I would sing a lot of songs with his name in it. I would do a thing where every morning when he was a puppy, morning pup. Tell him it was so hard to be a morning pup. And I got into this weird habit when my wife was out of town when he was in a puppy, singing the Cooper is hungry, the Cooper needs food, and repeating that over and over again. It sort of sounded like the roof is on fire in my head. He ended up recognizing that song, and if he was around right now, he would be very excited, staring at me with perked ears, thinking he was about to be fed again. He had bad teeth and bad ears. Like, almost immediately, his teeth started getting bad. He loved to chew on bones and antlers and stuff. Like, his back teeth, we would brush them semi-regularly. He had allergy problems. He had backward sneezes a lot, especially during the summer. Like that. His ears got really bad. He was prone to possibly yeast infections. He only ever got a yeast infection once. Anytime you looked in his ears, there would just be massive amounts of gunk. And the problem was the solution you pour down the ear and you rub around and you wipe away to get that all out. He hated that with a passion. He always knew when you had it. Like, you would even have him outside and try to hide in your pocket, and possibly he could smell it, but he would come in and immediately, like, nope, not getting near you. We have a video when he was pretty young, during Easter, one time trying to get him over to us, as Jesus Christ Superstar plays very loudly on my TV, and him just cowering. He got somewhat better, but he would always end up, like, in his crate or on his bed for me to clean his ears, and God, he hated it. He would have a complete freak out afterwards. The only time he managed to get a yeast infection, because we didn't want to do it because it was like torture to him, was on the 2020 election. We had to take him in that day for the yeast infection, and I cleaned his ears a few days before the end. I feel bad about that. But I swear, you would clean his ears, and within a day or two, it started looking bad again. It's just so unfortunate for him, seeing how much he hated it. He loved to pull out his hair and try to eat it. God, that dog tried to eat pretty much anything. There were these little orange seeds from trees that he would constantly try to dive down and get, and I swear I would hold his head up the entire time, and we would stop at a corner, and I would look over and he'd be chewing on something, and I'd find one in his mouth, and I'm like, how the did you get this in your mouth? I didn't let you more than a foot away from them. When I would try to play D&D, he would jump up and try to play with me because he could hear me talking. Usually with a dragon toy, funny enough. During COVID, my wife having to work from home, he was always a pain during her advisory classes because he would run over and try to play with her, get her attention, thinking she was talking that way for him. Her school has a pet day at the end of the year, which he never went to because, well, he was uncontrollable and she didn't want to deal with that. We're actually going to take his treats to it this year to deal with those. He wasn't much of a howler or a barker. He had a high-pitched bark. The only time you really could get him to bark was when we took him back to Oklahoma and he would be left outside in a kennel and he would start barking like, hey, I'm not that type of dog. I'm an inside dog. Why am I not with you? But he was pretty happy most of the time. He loved to lay out in the front lawn, especially if he was feeling sick. There's probably things I'm forgetting that I'm going to hate myself for forgetting. But now we get to the really hard part. So roughly the beginning of the year, he started having trouble getting up. It was like he didn't want to use his right paw till the last moment, so he would hold it like folded up inwards, and then as his like back legs got up and his front paw, he would finally start to use it, and it was really hard to get a recording of because it happened so quickly that you couldn't get your phone out and get the camera app out quick enough. And if you tried to get him up with like a treat or something, he was so excited that he didn't do it as much, so it was hard to catch. We took him into the vet. They found nothing wrong with him, and they just said keep watching it. It sort of subsided. I had stopped taking him for jogs, telling people that we thought he had arthritis. It turns out his sister is borderline with her elbows, so we thought he might be borderline too. So basically having dysplasia or near dysplasia, or just really bad there. So I had stopped taking him for jogs. I took him for jogs again. He of course enjoyed that. I actually didn't jog with him for all that long because first I just wanted to walk and an excuse not to have to jog. But the last half a year maybe we had started jogging. He liked to play tug of war. As soon as that leash started bouncing, he tried to play tug of war, and there was usually like one lap I couldn't keep him from doing, and it was such a pain. In the overly excited column, my wife got really embarrassed telling people that he was 3 when he turned 3 because he should have aged out of his very puppy trying to run at and jump at other people and dogs. I would tell people that, and they would always kind of laugh. So as for the tug of war, he did that, especially younger, a lot. Like right in the middle of crossing the street, as the crosswalk is warning us that we need to get out of the street, he would start to spin. He loved to chase his tail. This is apparently from his line. There was a dog they really loved called Tweet, who was his great-great-grandmother or great-great-great-grandmother, loved to spin around and bark. He liked to spin too, and he would do that sometimes in the middle of street and catch his tail and just fall over as I'm like, we have to get moving soon. This is a very busy drive intersection. So he was having these legs problems. It got bad again at the end of March, and we had stopped, and then I think that night we think he fell out of bed. He jumped in and out of bed constantly, which was what was worrying us, because our bed's like 3 feet off the ground. He would jump on and off to cuddle with us a lot during the night. But I heard a loud noise that sounded like to me he had fallen. Possibly he had hit the door, but he had fallen. And this seemed pretty concrete when the next day he started limping. He didn't limp bad, but over the course of the day it got worse. So we took him in, and it was that right leg. We took him in again, he got x-rays. They found nothing wrong with the leg. They gave him anti-inflammatories and pain medication. We never thought the pain medication did anything. The anti-inflammatories stopped the limping, but he still had trouble getting up. So by the time that ended, he was actually not limping, and I blamed him getting overly excited for a dog a few days later, but he started limping after trying so hard to pull towards this dog he had played with multiple times. So I blamed that on the limping starting. So we took him back in. The vet seemed worried immediately because she had found an area that hurt when you squeezed it. We couldn't find an area. And my wife, not only growing up with golden retrievers, was a vet tech for a while. So she has a lot of experience working with dogs medically, and she couldn't find an area. But the vet did. The second time, it was really easy to find an area on that right leg that he whined when you squeezed, and she seemed pretty worried about that and would have given him an x-ray, but she had already given us a ortho referral. So he ended up getting a CT scan later that week. And that also found nothing, because they only did his leg. And they said he was given another prescription. He had been given a second prescription for anti-inflammatories, but the ortho surgeon said we should probably do it for 3 weeks to a month and see how he was doing. Due to things and places not being open on the weekend, he went like a day or two without anti-inflammatories between the second and third time he started anti-inflammatories, and he started getting up really difficultly, like aggressively. It was worse, and we would pick him up on the step because we were limiting his movement. He was sleeping in his crate those last few months, and if you held him somewhere on his chest, he started to whine. The anti-inflammatory stopped that. So he only had a few days left on his anti-inflammatory. He had what felt like a large lump to me on his chest for around this time. My wife wasn't too worried about it. She didn't think it was that off. It turned out it was, in fact, a tumor. That wasn't the big problem, though. Over the last week, I started finding tinier lumps, at least 3, that were very hard to find. They moved, which also sort of started pointing towards cancer. During that time, he was, still happy. He did get to a point where he didn't want to get up for the Roomba. The amount of times I tried to call him to get him up as a Roomba bounced off of him. He also chewed up his right elbow. So I had a cone on him for the last week. We actually started letting him sleep out of his crate with the cone, because it's just a pain in the ass in the crate for him with the cone. So he was on his last few days, and we were talking about taking him in again. They said they wanted to take him to neurology for the next referral if this didn't stop. And it was very clear with him having trouble getting up that it wasn't gone. So on Monday, I had gotten back from my jog, and my wife had brought up that during his walk he had been a doofus because he wasn't paying attention, and he walked into a wall. That's what she thought it was. She was playing Zelda, I was writing. So we're both kind of ignoring him. He has a habit of wanting to go out a lot at night, and like the last time I take him out is at like 9:30, pretty consistently. And it was only 8, and he had gone out like at 6 or 7, so he didn't have to go out. But while I was finishing writing, he came up and sat next to me, and it was weird because usually he like puts his head on the bed where I was, or like he would try to get attention in pets, and he sat kind of away from the bed and wasn't really looking at me. He was just sitting there looking forward, and it was really strange that I asked him if he was all right. And he was like that for a while. I didn't think much of it other than it was weird. He went and laid down right outside the bedroom where he loved to lay, because it was the cool 2 floors of the bathroom and the hardwood floor. A little after I had finished writing, my wife started asking very loudly if he was okay. She said he made a noise. Now looking back on it, we think he may have had a seizure. But he had peed himself lying there, and he then threw up. And he didn't seem to want to get up, and his eyes were not opening a lot. But when I put the leash on him to try to clean him up, I didn't do a good job. He still had vomit on his neck. So we called for about 10 minutes to find a place that could take him. It was closer than the last one, which happened to be on Sunset. This one was only like 15 minutes away down the freeway. As we were taking him out, he fell off the step in a weird way. He seemed fine, but he fell off. And then at one point he cried while we were trying to take him out, and we didn't understand why. Walking to the car, he had like a whine cry, and we didn't understand why. And he had a little freak out while driving there. I think it may have been another seizure. I was hoping it was just like something was bothering him, and he was just kind of trying to roll back on it in the car. So we waited outside for a bit. It actually didn't take too long for them to come get him. We had to sit outside because of other dogs, and like even when we would take him to the vet and him not feeling well, he was so excited. The vet people always loved him because he loved the vet. The attention didn't matter what they were doing with him. It was like, you are touching me. I love it. Pet me, give me attention. They would come out and tell us how much they enjoyed having him. And even the receptionist at his vet would come over to pet him while he was excited in the lobby. So for this place, we were outside, and he was having trouble sitting because he was sliding. And he got vomit all over my leg. So they came and got him as we tried to explain things. I don't remember how long it took for them to come and get us, to talk to us the first time. As we explained what had happened with him. The ER vet seemed a bit worried. She had noticed that he had some muscle degeneration around his head, which neither one of us had noticed. And he had apparently gone blind. We did not notice. That's why he was having issues. He had gone blind. She thought it was probably fungal at the time, probably blaming it on one of the times we went to Oklahoma, him getting a fungal infection. So they were going to keep him over. We showed him the video, the one good video we ended up getting of him trying to get up. Seeing it, she thought it was in his spine. It read spinal to her, so she thought it was very much neurological, either fungal infection. They took him back and told us how much it was going to cost. It was going to be just under like $10,000, and he couldn't get an MRI because neurology wasn't there until the morning. This was like 10 o'clock at night. So we left. We asked if we could see him in the beginning of that conversation, but we were so out of it that we got into the car and drove away, and then we had noticed we hadn't said goodbye to him. Sorry, I'm low battery on my phone. We didn't say goodbye to him, and we decided not to turn back because we thought we would get that chance. He had to be so scared. He couldn't see and we weren't there. At least he was probably happy with the text. So we got a call like an hour afterwards where she thought it was fungal. There had been damage to his lungs, and she thought it was in his brain. And it sounded to me when I was talking to her that it would have been very bad when it was revealed it was in his brain. My wife argued that that's not. It would just have taken longer with medication. My wife went into work to have something to do that morning, and when she got back around 11 or 12, she had explained that he had gotten up, he had gained a sight in one of his eyes, but he had weakness on one of the sides, but he was up and eating and seemed happy. She seemed very sure, no matter what the diagnosis was, that we would get to take him home at least one more time. So they put him under for his MRI because he can't move, so he was anesthetized. As they gave him in the MRI, his heart stopped. They called us to ask if they should try to resuscitate him. We told them yes, so we had to wait 10 to 15 minutes for them to call back. No sign of life. There was still some electrical activity in him, so my wife had to authorize euthanasia. It's okay, I'm crying. It's okay. And he was gone. So we drove there. And we were brought in to the room, and they brought him in. I had managed not really having to deal with death or the physical manifestation of it my whole life. So when they brought him in, and we pet him, all I could think of was he wasn't really cold, but he just wasn't warm. And I hated that that's going to be the strongest memory I have of him. Lifeless on that table. It turned out, it was from the MRI, it was a hemangiosarcoma. I'm probably saying it wrong. It's an aggressive form of cancer that golden retrievers are very susceptible to. Even if they had caught it when symptoms had started, he was a goner. It was bad. The neurologist said it was one of the largest, worst cases she had ever seen. So he had to be put down no matter what. So now we're waiting for his cremation. The next day we had to back up and throw away some of his stuff. It took a long time. I didn't realize how much ambient noise he caused. It's so quiet now. You can't pinpoint what it was. Was it his breathing? Was it just his general presence? But it's very quiet now. There isn't really much to say. It was just unfortunately very unlucky.
was only 3.5. So if you watch this, thanks for bearing through this, and how incoherent it was. But I just wanted to say I had a dog. His name was Cooper.